most important thing to remember on the purchase agreement is that your buyer or your seller has to initial the bottom of every doggone page all the way to the end. That's the biggest mistake. That's the biggest mistake that was made. And then at the top, when everything's accepted, there's a place for the acceptance date and initials of the last person on the contract. So when everything's all negotiated out, hopefully there'll be no negotiation. If someone was to counter your offer and your buyer accepted the offer, then it's done and they sign at the very top here. That means all the negotiations are done. And we have the ratified contract. Some people say ratify, I say accepted.
So yeah, so basically anybody that's accepting will be the one that's going to have to initial the
Yes, okay. Yes. It counters back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The last person to say, I do. I'll take whatever it is you've offered me and I'm happy with that. The very last person is the person who initials at the top.
So if you do a counter offer, you use this again,
yes.
Back and forth, and you add it to it?
If there is a counter offer and the seller counters and the buyer counters back again, there's room for it in here, but when we get to that, I'll cover it.
Because that was the big question in my head.
Yeah. And if I have a lot of confusion with not a lot of confusion, a lot of conversation with the selling agent, and I can see if there's several terms in here, look, I got your offer, they're going to counter back price, or they're not going to counter back price, however, we're going to do this, this, and this. And then I talk to my buyer, and they're going to go, yeah, but I want so-and-so. I try to call it back and say, look, this is what they're saying. And I know we're going to counter once on here, but if it gets big, I'm doing it again. Because I hate this being all muddy. I hate it being all muddy. And sometimes when the seller will call me and say, this is what we've got going, and they'll accept this or they'll accept that, I may go back to my buyer and tell them, and we may make some changes to the purchase agreement. If it's just small things, like they're not going to pay for a home warranty, or they're not going to, I'm trying to think what else could be in there.
Fix the garage door, whatever that is.
Whatever it is, yeah. The pool equipment doesn't convey, something along those lines. Those are small, but if it's something big, if the small things, I might go back and change the purchase agreement and have them sign it again. So we've got, because I like my contracts to be really, really clean. But there's plenty of room for back and forth in the contract itself. 10 o'clock and we're going to start. Okay. Donna Dewberry wanted to come in.
Oh, she did that.
She's in here somewhere.
Oh.
And I know we have Shanna. I don't think we have anybody in Orange Beach. Hey, Lori. And who? I can't read the thing there. Somebody's trying to FaceTime me.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. Hold on one second.
Good morning.
Hello. Okay. Agent who's having an issue. Okay. Issues today. I'm going to start because it is 10 o'clock. And everybody has a purchase agreement. I'll give you a minute to print one off if you need to. Or pull one up on the computer, whatever works easiest for you.
I will call, figure all it out, and then you can call back or whatever we need. Okay.
Good morning.
Yes.
It is a little bit warmer than I would like for it to be, but it's nice.
I think halfway through October. Start to hit them.
It felt
Yeah, I
great last
remember-
night.
I remember decorating for Christmas in shorts and a tank top, so there you have it. But I caught like this much of the news and it said cooler weather coming through. I'm like, yay.
Cooler weather like low evenings.
Yeah, I got my car pulled out of the garage and I'm like, wait a minute. Did you get a question?
Did you get one, Chuck?
No,
Alright, sounds
there you
great, thanks.
No, we're gonna get chocolate. Hey, that worked out perfect. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Ray.
One empty chair. She's coming back for her printed off purchase agreement. It's on my screen back here. Yep. I can't see the name on it. Oh, no. Are you ready, Dawn? Is everybody ready? Dawn looks like she's looking. You're muted, Dawn. Are you ready? You can give me an okay or a no. Okay, good. Here we go. Okay, so first thing on our purchase agreement is the date of the offer, which of course is simple. Buyer's name, type of print, seller's name, type of print. You're not going to know the seller's name more than likely, so that can be like blank.
Buyers, both names,
For me,
husband and wife, if there is a husband and wife,
yeah, whatever the house is deeded in.
both, okay.
Yeah, whatever the house is deeded in. Let me see something here. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm coming around that way. It's easier for everybody, I think. The acceptance date, of course, that stays blank because it's not been accepted yet. And then the please read carefully part, go over that with your buyer. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to want to hear it. Seriously, they just don't. They just want to buy the house. They don't care. But you can go over it with them in cases of new construction properties, Alabama's caveat, buyer beware. If you have questions, seek legal counsel, which is good. Monday through Friday, 12 a.m., ending at 11:55 is what they're considering a business day. So they know if we set a date for them to reply, that they're not going to say, we should have heard something today and it's not. Okay, so here's our real estate agency disclosure. And like I said, you're not going to know the seller's name. You may not. Generally, I leave that blank and let the listing agent fill that out. So the listing company, I would type in the name of the company. It's not necessary that you do because the agent will do that. I gotta see you so I know that you're getting it. So let me go this way. The listing agent can do that, or you can do it. It's up to you. And of course, who they represent, I always leave that blank because I don't know. I have no idea. But I know who I'm going to represent. So if the selling company is our listing and it's Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast, and the selling company, which be careful, those of you on team, be real careful here. If it's Keller Williams Alabama Gulf Coast, it's not Keller Williams Alabama Gulf Coast her group. Or it's not Keller Williams Alabama Gulf House-Made Homes, just Keller Williams Alabama Gulf Coast. And if this is Keller Williams Alabama Gulf Coast, who are we going to represent? Which is a whole different class.
So, listing company?
If they're both Keller Williams.
Oh, it's going to be dual consensual or limited consensual.
Absolutely. And this is the biggest problem I've been having lately when I'm doing compliance. And I get these sometimes, it says an agent of the seller and an agent of the buyer, and it's both Keller Williams. And then I have a limited consensual dual form in my thing. I want the form, but I want them to go back and fix this too. Now, if this says I represent the seller, and this one says I'm a transaction broker, that's fine. You're a transaction broker, you're not representing anybody. So this part doesn't matter. Or if they're a transaction broker, then this buyer can represent anybody they want. It's just that the buyer and the seller cannot have separate representation because the listing belongs to the company. And we already have a fiduciary relationship to the seller. Okay, so that's an important thing to remember. We have a fiduciary relationship with the seller. So I generally, if Keller Williams has it listed for sale, I'm going to be a transaction broker, is what I try to do. If I got to be a limited, I'll be a limited, but I prefer to be a transaction broker. Okay, so we got that part filled out, and make sure you get the initials on it. And they have their recap. I'm trying to hone in just on the purchase agreement, but I have a habit of bringing in all the other documents that are necessary. The property and the purchase price, put the address in and be as detailed as you can. And of course, the city and the state, legal description. If you have it, I would suggest you're going to pull the deed on this property anyway.
So what would you say on the legal description? Is it a number or a description?
It is a bunch of numbers.
It's like north 200
Yeah.
something.
If you pull the deed and it is like this big, huge legal description, 50 feet from the first
Okay.
thing that was found in the ground, and then I generally put in here long legal if that's what I get. But if I'm selling a house, I know on the MLS sheet, and I know from pulling it, making sure everything's correct, that it's lot 62, unit 2 in Lake Forest subdivision, or wherever it is. But address in city and state, the easy part. Buyer's initials. Buyer's going to initial every single sheet, all the way to the back, even the parts that you don't sign. Come back. Okay, and now we're at the purchase price. Can you all hear me okay? Yes? Okay. And then property address. If you're doing it DocuSign, sometimes it'll automatically bring it in for you, so it's on the top of every one. And then your purchase price written out. I think our sheet has it where you type in the purchase price and it automatically writes it out here for you.
So we're doing property address twice, on first and second page?
There's a property address on the top of every one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to make sure we know what we're talking about.
All right.
Okay, terms of your sale. You're going to have your pre-approval already, because you're not going to put a buyer in your car or meet them at the house without a pre-approval letter. They're doing cash, they're doing a new mortgage. Seller financing is like non-existent. There may be, but chances are no. Your new mortgage, you're not absolutely locked into this. You can only go by what they've told you. If this changes, it changes, and it'll change with the title company. So if you put something in here that they're getting a 30-year mortgage, and then you find out they're getting a 15-year, don't panic. Okay, so they're going to get a new mortgage. They're going to get, let's say they're going to get an FHA, or if they're getting a different kind of weird one, you would put it in here, like USDA or something would go in here. And the approximate amount of, generally, people are going to put 3% down, 6% down, 20% down, whatever, okay? At an interest rate, or amount equal to 80% of the purchase price or whatever. An interest rate not to exceed this percent. So as important as a realtor, you want to know what the rates are. It's just common. People are going to call you, what are the rates now? I'm not a mortgage person, but the last time I looked, they were 3.1%. In that case, I'm going to put 4 in here. I try to keep it as close to the going rate at the time, and I give it a little bit of cushion. Okay, because if the rates jump up to 9, and they're going to go, God, I wish I hadn't bought that house. Well, we're out because we've put in here, we don't want to go above 4.
And what's the best way to find the most accurate, up-to-date interest rate?
If you get in good with a mortgage company, or call a mortgage company, or one that you use a lot or your buyers use a lot, and tell them to put you on their list, they generally will send out emails. This is what the rates are today. Okay? Or you can Google it. So you got the rates. Buyer to provide written loan pre-qualification letter from the lender within 5 business days following acceptance date. I leave this blank because this is going to give me the 5 business days, number 1. And number 2, I'm going to have the pre-approval letter already, or I know it's on its way. Okay? So you want to have your pre-approval letter. And then appraisal. It's always contingent on the appraisal. If the house doesn't appraise, they don't have to buy the house. So it's contingent on the appraisal. It says within 20 business days, if left blank, and that's usually enough time. Number 4, the buyer's costs. Buyer to pay for closing agent settlement fee, recording fee, any mortgage title insurance premiums required by the lender, any lender require related fees and credit report fees, any loan closing costs, including prepaid items, any fees required for the transfer of the property pursuant to Fairhope single tax, otherwise agreed upon by all parties. Spells out what the seller's costs are, deed, title, insurance policy, and then any costs that they have. It used to be years ago that the seller always paid for the termite. This is where I generally have to remind myself that now the buyer is paying for it. But generally, in the provisions, I ask for the seller to pay for it.
I was saying, is it still, could I, still ask the seller, hey, my buyer doesn't want to buy this property unless there's a termite inspection or.
Well, you have to have a termite inspection. I generally put in the other provisions, seller to provide WRI or pest infection or transfer letter, and pay for current termite contract to transfer. That shows you what I put in there. This is our included with the properties. Of course, the lighting fixtures, shades, ceiling fans, drapery hardware, window shades, window door screens, laundry tubs, anything that is attached stays with the house. So they can't take my stuff down and take it with them. I have had that happen before.
Step down as in like curtain rods or like window treatments? Or?
They can take the window treatments
Okay.
unless you ask for them, but they have to be the curtain rods. Anything attached has to stay.
Okay.
The dishwasher, the stove, the ceiling fans.
I knew the big ones. I've always heard
Yeah.
back and forth. Okay, I was
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
What about the wall mounted TV?
No.
The,
The Walmart, you can ask for the Walmart wall mount to stay,
Right.
but the TV doesn't stay, that's theirs.
of course, no.
Yeah, but right in here you can check. Bathroom vanity mirrors will or will not convey. Wall mounted televisions will or will not stay. TV wall mounting hardware. Generally, they're not gonna leave their TV, but they'll leave you that hardware. They don't want to take it down anyway and leave the whole. If they want the refrigerator, and if they want the washer and dryer. Now I do my checks in here, and I might mention it again in the other provisions as well, just to make sure. But good listing agents will see this and say, this is what they want. Or their seller when they go over it.
Danita,
Yes.
when you're doing new construction,
Yes,
you don't have to check any of that. Am I correct?
correct. If it's not in the house, yeah, no,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
you're welcome. Well, yeah, the bathroom vanity mirrors, well, they're not there yet. But you should have something with new construction from the builder that gives a list of everything that's going to be in the house already. And that'll attach to your purchase agreement. No items currently in home are to be exchanged or replaced without written agreement by all parties. That's if they've got a beautiful dining room chandelier and they replace it and they go in and they got a Home Depot $20 one that their uncle installed and it's hanging as far from the ceiling kind of thing. If they're going to replace a chandelier or something important to them, it generally says it in the MLS. And when you take your listing class, they'll say, if you're on a listing appointment and the seller says, everything's going to go, but my eat-in kitchen and my dining room chandelier were my mother's and I'm taking them with me, I would tell them then replace them now. So it's not an issue.
Before you take pictures or?
Before you take pictures and before we put the house on the market, because it could become an issue. No item of personal property shall be transferred to the buyer except those listed in paragraph 5. Personal property will be listed here and otherwise attached shall be conveyed at no value for appraisal purposes, which is an important sentence. Everything has to convey at no value if it's personal property. In here, you would put if they wanted the bar stools, if they wanted the, I'm trying to think what buyers would want. They want the swing set in the backyard. They want the drapery in the master bedroom. They want everything in another room, or they want all the furniture or anything that they might ask for. I've had people ask for the car, sports car in the garage. They wanted that. So you hear, anything could be in here. Whatever they want to stay can be in here. And they ask for some weird things sometimes. But you go, absolutely, I'll write it in for you. Sale, settlement, or lease of other real estate. Neither this contract nor the granting buyer's loans referred to herein can be contingent in any manner upon the sale, settlement, and or lease of any other real estate unless a contingency for sale, settlement, and other lease of other real estate is contained herein. Number 7, inspections and due diligence. Personally, if I'm selling you a house and they haven't even poured the slab for it, it's contingent on a home inspection. It's a brand new house, they just finished it, it's contingent on a home inspection. I want everybody to have a home inspection. Doesn't matter if it's new construction or it's not. Some buyers are going to say, I don't care, I don't want to have an inspection. It's completely up to them, but I'm going to strongly suggest that they do. It's got a box that it is or is not. And then sellers to be notified. If it's left bank, it's 10 business days. If you think it's going to take you longer to get a home inspection, you would fill the blanks in here. But generally, you can get it back and get the report back and have it to them long before 10 days. Any connection fees required for inspection shall be paid by the seller. Sometimes it's vacant, if the water's off, the power's off, or something like that. I always check seller. It is seller if it's left blank. Seller's property disclosure. If there is a disclosure, they have to have it to you within 7 days. After I write the offer, I want the disclosure right away. Try to get your disclosure as quickly as you can. Insurance and property flood. I would say the offer is contingent, subject to buyer's ability to obtain insurance, because you never know what the price is going to be and if it's outrageous, and so it's always contingent on them getting insurance. And then we notify them within 5 business days if it's going to be too high.
Why is not the disclosure attached to the MLS?
What's that?
The disclosure, why is not already with?
Sometimes it is. An agent will attach it in the MLS. There'll be other documents in the MLS, and the seller's disclosure will be there. There are lots of companies who don't use seller's disclosures at all, so you can't get one. If your buyer is really adamant about a seller's disclosure, I'll just send over one of ours and say, my buyer's asking that your seller fill this out for you. Doesn't guarantee that they're going to.
With the insurance cost, do you ever run into that with being like flood insurance or anything being this close to the water?
I ran into it one time, and we were at closing.
So outrageous.
Yeah, we were at closing and realized that just the front corner of his property was considered to be in a R2 flood zone. And he had to pay flood insurance. So it wasn't too high, but it was very disappointing, and it was new construction. Once again, buyer's initials, property address. Of course, our system should automatically put that in there for you, but double check and make sure it's there. Internet. Are you contingent or are you not contingent on there being internet in the house? Generally, people say yes. If I get somebody who's really, really interested in a house, I'm going to say, pull out your phone, check and make sure that you can, get the internet, you can send messages, that you have a good signal on your phone, and all that kind of stuff. Nothing worse than have a buyer call you back and go, guess what? I don't have service at my house. Termites, destroying insects and fungus. Seller is always responsible for if there's a termite inspection and there's damage to the house, or current termites on the house. 10 days if left blank. I generally put a longer number in here, like 20 or 25. You got that? Good. I'll put like 20 or 25 in there because I'm not sure how soon we're going to close. And if it's gonna be 45 days out, I want the termite inspection closer to that time. So I always put 25 or 30 days here instead of just 10 business days. Here's the new one. It's the sole responsibility of the buyer to obtain a new termite wood infestation contract for the retreatment and or repair of damage caused by wood. The new infestation contract shall be obtained by the buyer's expense. Seller shall not transfer an existing termite and wood infesting contract to the buyer. You need to find out from the listing agent, if there's a termite contract currently on the house, and is that contract transferable? She's going to tell me, I don't know, yes or no. I don't care what she tells me. I'm looking for the name of the termite company, and I'm going to call them. And I'm going to say, I just wrote an offer on 123 Main Street. I understand they have a termite contract with you. Can I transfer that to the buyer, and how much is that?
Would you generally respond to the
Yes.
question?
Yes.
Even though it's not, okay.
Yeah, the
Sometimes
termite company
they-
will tell you if they're going to transfer it or not. They'll let you know if they will. Some of them, like Terminex, generally say, no, we won't. So I know we got to go a different route. Number 11, systems and components seller does or does not warrant the heating, cooling, air conditioning equipment, including window units, plumbing, electrical systems, and all including appliances shall be in proper working order at time of closing. We're going to have a home inspection, so we're going to know that. But I want to say, yes, they do. Number 12 is about your home warranty. Do they want one? Do they not? And who's going to pay for it? This is $500 if left blank. Most of them are $525. So if they do want one and we want the seller to pay for it, we have back by the printer, you're facing the printer and your turnaround right there's where home warranty things are. You can look through them and see how much they are. The cheapest one is less than 500, but doesn't cover a whole lot. And then the next one's like 525 or 550. So some of the buyers lose out because you only left it blank and it's 500. So I always look at those. I haven't looked at them in a while. Quite frankly, I don't work with buyers. But generally, I will look at that to see if it's 525 or 550. Lead-based paint disclosure, if it's built prior to 1978, which you'll know, you'll need that. And then seller's initials, or buyer's initials, I'm sorry. Title and conveyance seller shall cause an ATL alter commitment for title insurance and the amount of the purchase price at closing at the seller's expense. Closing shall be at a location of seller's election unless otherwise put here. You have a title company you absolutely love to use, you would put the name of that title company in there. More than likely they'll counter it, maybe they'll go ahead with it, but I generally put the title company I choose to use and have used the most in it. So we have that. This is the title. If you have a married couple or whoever it is, and try to get their middle initial if you can to put in here. They'll save the title company from calling you to ask you what it is. But the title would be in John J. Jones and Mary J. Jones with right of survivorship or without. If they're married, generally with right of survivorship. (15) addresses property taxes and public improvements. Generally, in a nutshell, saying that all of the taxes will be up to date. If there's anything still owed on the property or assessments owed on the property prior to closing, the seller's going to pay for those. The last one where you can check in is that if any portion of the property is assessed under current use classification, any rollback or other additional assessments levied against the property as a result of this sale shall be paid by the, I always check seller. John.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
You want to teach?
I'm here to learn.
Okay. Okay, lease agreement, rental management agreements. If the property is currently leased and you're purchasing it, this is where you would deal with this.
Can I add one comment on that rollback stuff?
Yes.
You guys probably should never worry about it too much unless you're dealing with 5-acre lots or
Yeah.
larger that are ag exemption.
Right.
That's what it's for.
Mhm.
If it's for residential or other stuff, it's not ag exemption, it's not going to apply.
I have never, ever ran into this problem.
Yeah.
in my entire career, ever. The rollback taxes or anything
You
like
start
that.
working farmland, different story.
Absolutely. This is about the lease agreements. The property is subject to any lease, management agreement, or license agreement. This offer shall be contingent on buyer's acceptance thereof. If you're buying a piece of property or selling a piece of property to an investor or something along those lines, they're going to want to see that lease and see if there's a way they can get that renter out to get their own in, if they can accept that lease and continue on or whatever. Those are write-ups.
Now, what about if it is a short sale? Like, it's a bank owned, I don't know, I'm just.
Right.
Usually are they current on taxes?
Yes, what the bank has to pay at closing.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the bank is.
That's like if it's a foreclosure. It's been a foreclosure for a while. And taxes are due now. Well, now, yeah, they come due August 1st. They're payable, you gotta pay them by the end of December. If there was a foreclosure and the bank hadn't paid the taxes on it yet, which more than likely they have not, they just pay them at closing. Yeah, they'll be billed for that and have to pay the closing.
That's not something we have to check, they're really the title company.
Title company takes care of all of that. Yeah, yeah. Title company will find out all the little deep secrets that need to be found out. Owners Association assessments. Property is not subject to any property owner association. You would check here. If it is, owner's assessments would become a lien attached to the property prior to closing. The seller's going to pay for them. Dues that are due and payable prior to the acceptance date, this agreement shall be paid for the seller. Owning association's assessments that become due prior to closing, but after acceptance of this agreement, the seller's going to pay for those too. Have the seller pay for everything. Owners Association assessments that are approved by the association prior to closing, that come due and payable after closing, that's going to be on the buyer. Owner Association fees, monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or annual dues will be prorated between buyer and seller at the time of closing. That's if you have a seller who doesn't pay the dues quarterly or monthly, he just writes a check for the whole year. And you're closing in the middle of the year, and that gets credited back to the closing. Any transfer fees are paid by the buyer. If there is a cost to transfer ownership to your new buyer, they have to pay that. Fees charged for verification of dues assessments required for closing are always paid by the seller. Don't forget your initials. Initials at the bottom of every page. That's the thing that gets forgotten more often. And then your property address again. Number 18 is a survey. Do we want an existing survey? Do we want them to provide a new survey for us? Elevation certificate, do we want an existing or do we want a new one? This tells C is if you do want the new one and who you want to pay for that. And same thing with the new elevation certificate and who wants to pay for that. And then E is no survey to be provided or no elevation certificate. And then F is for additional survey requirements. Generally, it's providing an existing survey. And they'll let you know right away if they have one or they don't. There's going to be some mortgage companies, some that will require a new survey. The majority do not, but some will. Number 19.
And for a survey,
Pardon me?
you come to the city? Or from
A surveyor.
Surveyor.
Yeah.
It's like around $500?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, you contact a surveyor. Walkthrough and verification of condition. This is about the final walkthrough before you close. I generally do my walkthrough, hopefully the day of closing. My closing's in the morning. I'll go the day before. I don't do my walkthrough a week before because something could happen in between there. Buyers shall have the right to make a final walkthrough in the property prior to closing. It is not a contingency of the sale, but solely to confirm the property is maintained in the same condition as the acceptance date. These repairs have been completed and they agree the sellers completed their obligation. This transaction is considered to be an as is where is sale, except otherwise provided herein. The following utilities that are provided by the seller through the date of closing: electric, water, sewer, and gas if possible. So they have to have all of that on. if you do your walkthrough, I know this says right here, it's not a contingency of the sale, but if you do a walkthrough on the property and you're closing at 4 and they've moved out at 10 and you're there at noon and they put a hole in the wall, the movers hit, moving out the couch, which has happened, and hit the wall on their way out. I generally talk to the listing agent and say, we got a big hole in the wall. Hopefully I've gotten a call from her before that. Says, we got a hole in the wall. We've already contracted somebody to fix it. They'll be here tomorrow. I'm going to write on my final walkthrough form, seller to repair hole in the wall at their expense, or anything that you find at the walkthrough. Further explanation of 19. You are assisting them on the walkthrough. You're not an inspector. You can't point things out or any of that kind of stuff. And you want them to turn all the burners on, and you want them to turn the stove on, and you want them to look at everything. Now, some buyers are going to go in, they just don't care. They walk through the house and go, yeah, it's great, let's go. Some look a little bit further. So you are assisting them. I mean, there's been times that I've wanted to point things out, but I know I'm not supposed to. And I may say, I wonder if they had a leak in the ceiling since we were here last time. And I might keep looking at them until they see it, but you're just assisting them on that final walkthrough.
So if they find that window that doesn't open or things like that, you can still write it.
They should find that on the inspection. That's why they're having a home inspection. The home inspector is going to find all of that stuff. Yeah, and if you don't have a home inspection, I'm just like,
Yes.
and we're going to do our final walkthrough and they're going to find something and we're like, we'd had a home inspection. Doggone if we'd only had a home inspection, he would have found that. Big dummy, you should have done it. No, I don't say that. Those are thoughts that I try not to have come out. Okay, closing and possession. This is where you're going to put your close date. You've got your pre-approval letter from them. You generally have an idea how soon that the mortgage company can get them closed. I'm going to put 40 or 45 days in your minimum because it does say here, or sooner if mutually agreed upon. I've had offers that come in that say we're going to close in 15 days. And then my question to the buyer's agent is, are they just waiting for a contract? They got everything they need. They just need to change this. Well, no. Well, then I know it's going to be longer than 15 days. But we're smarter than that. We know it's going to be 40 or 45.
Unless it's cash, right?
Oh, yeah, cash.
If cash is quicker.
Cash is a lot quicker. Yeah, that's a quick one. And then the bottom is about the possession. When do they want possession of the property? Majority of buyers say what? When do the majority of buyers want possession?
Closing.
Absolutely. So you want possession at closing. And buyer's initials and property address. Extension of closing date, because sometimes you have to do that. A period of 5 business days from the closing date shall be allowed. A period of 5 business days from the closing date allowed if the closing is delayed by reason of title defects. I found something, and the people who own the house were divorced, and she was supposed to sign off, but she didn't, or there's supposed to be a quick claim deed done, and there wasn't. Those are little instances like that it might be delayed. But this covers you because you've got that much time after your definite close date.
That has other acts of God in here. Literally, it's got everything covered.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a hurricane.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
On the 40 to 40, or the 0 days after closing, how does that work if you do like a lease back? I mean, that's still 0 days, right?
Yeah, if you're leasing it back to them, yeah, because you're taking possession, they're just leasing it.
Okay.
Yeah. And very rarely do you get a counter back that says 3 days after closing.
Okay.
Generally, if I have a seller who is elderly, they want a couple days because they're real like, I'm not moving my stuff till I have my check in my hand. Yeah. But that's all negotiable.
Okay.
22 in a nutshell. If the house burns down, they don't have to buy it. If a hurricane blows the house away, they don't have to use it. So that's risk of loss. If property is destroyed, materially damaged for reason of fire, flood, hurricane, named tropical storm, tornado, or other act of God between accepted date and the closing date, and seller is unable to restore it to its previous condition prior to said closing date, buyers shall have option of canceling agreement and recovering their earnest money. So that's just a given. 23 is your time to respond. How much time do you want to give that listing agent to get back with you with an answer? How long?
If it is a weekend. Saturday, not 24 hours.
You're 24. Anybody else?
48 week, I don't,
Oh, yeah, no, I'm going exactly what they're saying at this point.
If I'm ready to offer at 5 o'clock at night, I'm putting noon. Time is of the essence.
Didn't we talk about this yesterday? Or not yesterday, but in our
Yeah,
team meeting the other day?
Yeah.
Anita,
Giving you a whole lot of time. Yes,
can I ask a question about the extension of closing date?
yes.
Okay, so the conversation I had with you on Tuesday about my buyers and their financing that went away, rather than getting their earnest money back because of that, can I use 21? Because we were supposed to close on the 25th of September,
Mhm.
and we haven't because of the hurricane.
Right.
And our extension has already passed on the 8th of October.
Right.
So could I use this to do their earnest money and rather than telling the selling agent that they lost their financing?
Oh, well, if they can't get financing, they can't purchase the home and they get their earnest money back.
Okay,
Because the
All right.
whole offer, the entire offer is contingent on them being able to get financing. And if they
Okay.
can't get financing, or they buy a motor home, a week before and lose their financing, then they get their earnest money back.
okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, this is our time to respond. I make it as short as possible. If it's 8 o'clock at night, I might put 2 o'clock the next day, but I want it right away. Right away. If I have my house for sale and an agent calls me at 9:30 at night or 10 o'clock at night to tell me I have an offer on my home, I'm not going to be upset about that. So never do I give them 24 hours even. If the listing agent, I've talked to her and she knows I'm bringing an offer in, which is never going to happen either. I'll explain that in a minute. And tells me they're out of town or something, then I might give it a little more time. They're on a cruise ship somewhere. She's having a hard time getting a hold of them. But they'll let you know, but I want that to be as soon as possible. Let me go back. The reason that I never tell, I think I said this in team meeting. Were y'all there in team meeting?
Offers coming.
Yeah, never tell them an offer's coming because they might have somebody on the fence. I never do. I call them up and say, hey, that house is still available on 123 Main Street. It is great. I got an offer for you. I've already emailed it. You should have received it right now. Nobody's going to tell me I didn't get mine in time. Okay, time to respond. Withdrawal of offer by buyer and seller. All offers are counter offers, may be withdrawn at any time by the buyer or the seller. So if you write all this up and they counter back and say, bar stools will not convey. Because your buyers ask for the bar stools. Your buyer has the right to say, I'm not going to buy the house. So anytime the offer is countered, your offer is like there or not there. It's not going to be there. So you counter back and answer yes or no. So there's several reasons you can get out of a contract. And I've had buyers who've written offers on a contract, and then the house they really wanted fell out of sale, and now they want that one. And they want to know, how can I get out of the one I'm in? Well, if they give us a counter back. And they've countered back like $4,000. And my buyers say, "Oop, I'm out."
Don't want to pay the home warranty.
Yeah, don't want to pay the home warranty.
Lost a sale for $500.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, thank God. Now let's make an offer on the other house." So you want your offer to be, anyway. Y'all understand that. Earnest money deposit. This is the amount of your earnest money deposit that you put in. It's going to be deposited within 3 days at Flood Bank. I always make them write me an earnest money check. There's some agents that don't, and they're going to write the offer whenever the offer's accepted, but I don't like that. I want their money now, and I'm going to turn it into Carson now. You either tell them we have an accepted offer, deposit it, or we are in the countering phase, hold it until we get the accepted offer.
How long are we actually able to hold on to that earnest check until,
You,
not me, but Carson and stuff? Yeah.
Carson can hold it until it's accepted. We may negotiate this thing for a week. But I've turned it in, and on my sheet that I turned it in, it says fully executed contract deposit or negotiating the contract. But as soon as this offer is accepted, you need to let Carson know immediately. I have an accepted offer, deposit the money. But we need it when the offer is written. I'm not gonna write an offer and then tell me, I'll give you a check now. You're gonna give me a check now. It's
I have a
just,
question on the
yes,
negotiating thing,
Yes.
the offer and counter offer. So, the offer, you say, no, I'm not gonna buy the home, pay for the home warranty, I want out of the contract because there is something else.
Mhm.
Do you have to notify them or it's immediate?
oh yeah, you have to notify.
Yeah.
You have to notify them. Call the listing agent and say, my buyer no longer interested in the house. And they're gonna go, gonna go over a home
It's not-
warranty?
It's not in writing, it's not, it's just a phone call.
Well,
It's a
technically,
courtesy.
they said they rejected your offer, it's dead,
Mhm.
and they've sent you now an offer.
Yeah.
And so if you don't respond to it, it's a dead deal
Yeah,
anyway.
it's a dead deal anyway.
But
Because they're gonna have a time limit
But I
on
would
there.
always respond in writing, just to CYA, right?
Yeah, I do the same thing. But if you didn't, and they said, your counter offer, this is our counter offer, we're not paying for the home warranty, and your seller has till 5 o'clock today, or your buyer, excuse me, has till 5 o'clock today to respond to the counter offer, and it's 5:30, your deal's dead.
So your response in writing is declining the counter offer? How do you respond in writing to?
Email, text.
You can
whatever.
send
Okay,
email.
no, do it in
What I do
contract
personally,
form.
where they have written that they are not gonna pay for the home warranty, and they have till 5 o'clock to respond, I put in, buyer has rejected counter offer, and I'll have my buyer sign it and send it back. I like everything in writing. But if that's not necessary, but you can do that, or you can do email, whatever works best for you.
Writing will save you, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, you wanna have a paper trail. You wanna have a paper trail. And whenever if a seller counters to you and the buyer accepts it, that's the other thing I'm finding, and you click the accept box, and have them sign there. Because they're coming into me where the buyer may have signed but no box is checked, or they're coming into me where there's no box checked and there's no signature, but here's all our closing docs, and I'm like, I guess they accepted it. So it's important to check all your boxes and get all your signatures. Where are we at? Okay, buyer signatures and address again. If the buyer wants out of the deal and they're not really justified, or the seller thinks they're not justified, or the seller wants out of the deal and your people want their earnest money back, but the seller says they can't have their earnest money back, they have a specific form for that, and one of them won't sign it, they need to know that we're not going to be responsible for that. And this is what this states. And what will happen is the earnest money will be interpleaded into the court system. They can each hire attorneys and they can fight it out, which is going to cost them a lot more than the earnest money. And it will sit there until they take care of it, but guess what? We're not dealing with that.
So earnest money is pretty much always returned. When is it not returned to the buyer?
If the buyer just walks away, just doesn't buy the house, and there's really no reason for him not to buy the house.
There's truly no reason.
And truly no reason. We've got an executed contract, everything's fine, everyone's signed off on it, and the buyer changes his mind. He's not gonna get his earnest money back. He's just not.
And the other part, to make sure when you're working with buyers, make sure they understand what you just said is that seller, it may be perfectly legitimate reason. Their financing fell through, the appraisal didn't work, whatever.
Mhm.
But then the seller decides, I'm not giving the earnest money.
Yeah.
I'm not releasing the earnest money.
Yeah, and
We
you can't
can't
release it.
by law give that earnest money until both buyers and sellers sign off. And sometimes sellers get mad.
Yeah.
And then that's when legal opinions.
Especially if it's taken a long time. Like good examples right now with the hurricane. And you have the inspection, and there's so much back and forth, but they've had the property off the market for 3 months or 2 months or whatever. And then things don't work out, and the buyer's supposed to get their earnest money back. Yet the seller's angry. I've had the house off the market for almost 3 months. I'm keeping the earnest money. And we have a release of earnest money form, and before we have both signatures on it, the person's not going to give anybody's earnest money to anybody. So, but it's going to cost you more in the long run. And generally, they end up giving it back, but they.
Does the same thing happen with for reconstruction? Like for example, that for some reason the buyer walks away, earnest money are lost
Yes.
for no reason. If they walk away for no reason at all.
Yes. Yes. It's called failure to perform. And they can actually get sued for it, but
it's tough for a seller to win anything other than earnest money.
Yeah.
Unless you can prove really egregious stuff.
Right.
But a buyer can actually sue a seller to actually sell the house.
Right. Yeah.
That happened after Katrina.
Yeah, buyer saying I decided, or seller saying I decided not to do it. My wife and I have made up, and we're staying together, and we're not selling the house. Guess what?
I have another offer, $20,000 higher. I'm not selling you. I'm selling this person.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See in court.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And hopefully that's not my seller, the buyer. Default and legal remedies, that's where it addresses all that. Default by buyer and if it fails to compensate. Talking about the seller gets the earnest money, it's liquidated damages. Default by the seller, the same thing. Obligation for fees and expenses is number 27. Buyers and sellers acknowledge that in the event this agreement is canceled or said transaction does not close for any reason, fees or costs paid in advance are non-refundable. If the deal falls apart and you've had a home inspection, you're not going to get your home inspection money back. You've had your appraisal and you bought a new boat in between there and closing, and the mortgage company says you can't afford the loan now, you're still paying for the appraisal. And that's the other thing to let your buyers know. Don't make any big purchases. Don't buy a car. Don't go out and buy all new furniture for the house. Don't do any of that kind of stuff until after closing, because that'll affect, and the mortgage person will tell them too. So that'll be good. Electronic signatures, that they're okay, 29, or 28. 28, just what the purchase price and the terms of the sale may be disclosed after closing. It's going to be in the MLS. It's going to be public record. So everyone will know that and know how much they paid for the house. Number 30, it is agreed by the parties that buyer is making this offer and in entering into this agreement has not relied upon any statement, representation, promise, understanding, agreement whatsoever, whether implied or expressed by the seller or any agent outside the written parameters of this agreement. No modifications of this agreement shall be binding unless attached and signed by both. This is my favorite one. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. The seller told you it's a saltwater pool and you move in, it's not a saltwater pool. That's on you. If it's not in writing, it did not happen. You can't have a buyer who's going to assume that he could adjust the shelves and the kitchen cabinets and he can't, and now he's closed and his wife is livid and he's going to show up at the office to chew you out about it because it's your fault. It all happens, trust me. The paragraph, I want my buyer and my seller, I'm a selling agent, I want them all to read entire paragraph 30. Are they going to do it? I don't know. But they're going to initial here, that's for sure. Fairhope single tax. It's got a checkbox for if it is Fairhope single tax or not. And then that's a whole nother ballgame of what you need to do if it is. The different title transfer. And if you get a Fairhope single tax property, let me know. It's a process that you go through. You go through it once, you got it down.
Is that if you are looking at, or if you're showing the property in Fairhope, do you need to go, do you ever want to make sure the listing agent has it marked correctly, or is that pretty straightforward?
It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, and there is a map that shows what is Fairhope single tax and what isn't. Okay. Which is good. This is condominium disclosures. If it's a condominium, of course, it's a place to check that it's not. And then this tells all of the things that you need it. And the things that you can ask for if it's a condominium. Buyer's initials, property. 13 or 33, excuse me, authorizes the lender or the title company to provide copies of the closing disclosures and other settlement statements to the agents involved in the transaction, because they're going to give that to you after closing. You can get all the documents. Additional provisions. I know I've checked that I want the seller to pay for the termite inspection and the contract to transfer, but I'm going to put it in here again. I know I've asked for the TV wall mount to remain. I'm going to put it in there again. So I just want to make sure that they have it. I don't want the last minute, oh God, I forgot to check the thing. I just want everything that we want in here. Bar stools, whatever they're asking for, you want it in here.
Curtains, drapes.
Yeah, curtains, drapes, closing costs. If someone, they want to pay a certain, they want the seller to pay closing costs, that's going to go in here. Anything additional to this contract goes in your other provisions.
May I ask a question real fast on the
Absolutely.
termite thing? I had a friend ask me this the other day. So now it seems that some companies are, there's the termite bond, and then there's a termite damage repair, separate than in just the termite bond.
Well, you have a termite, they won't call them bonds anymore, they only call them contracts. So you could have a contract, it's just, is that termite contract, does it contain a replacement rider in it?
So it's not two separate things,
It's
it's
not. It's actually the same
included or
one, and,
not.
and some of them have replacement coverage and some of them don't. If they don't have a replacement coverage, they're not worth the paper they're written on. So if they find termites, they're gonna come out, they're gonna treat, but what about all the damage that was caused?
Yes.
So the majority of them have a replacement with them, but I would definitely check and make sure that they do. And were you here when we were talking about termites earlier? About if there's a, we're gonna ask them if the current termite contract on the house, number one, if it has one, if it's transferable. And then I'm gonna call them. Because I'm not so sure that the listing agent knows or not. Because some of them are not transferable at all. Okay, other provisions. Listing broker, I generally leave that blank. Every once in a while I'll pop the name in there, but I leave it, I'm just worrying about spelling out my own. I don't want to infringe on the listing broker at all. Okay. So now you've got your buyer, signed name, printed name, and initials. Okay, so that's all you're filling out on this, but you got to continue because you got to have the property address again, and you got to have the buyer's signatures again. Then you've got the last page, and you got to have the buyer's signature on that too. So those are the ones that are forgotten. Now, here's where the seller's going to accept or they're going to counter. And here's where they're going to give you the date and the time that you have to respond to their counter offer. They want $3,000 closing costs, we're only going to pay $2,000, whatever they're counting it's here. And here's your date and your time. And the seller's going to sign it. You're going to talk to your purchaser. Let me throw this in here. If they counter the price by $200, you have to do a new net sheet. Okay? There has to be a net sheet for every dollar amount that's in this contract. What the contract was written for, what it was countered at, no matter how many times it's countered. I do the compliance and sometimes I have 6 or 7 net sheets in there, but one for every single one. I did one last night at midnight and approved it, and I had 4 net sheets in there, but she was missing 1, so I sent it back to her. A difference of $5,000.
It's happened to the best of us.
Yeah, it does. Happens to me. I check my own, I'm like, I can't believe they didn't do that. I'm like, oh, that's me. Because none of us are perfect. But if they accept it or they don't accept it, your buyer is here. Same thing, fill in. They come up too much, or they don't want to pay that much, or they want to change anything in there, or they've refused to pay the termite, and you're like, oh no, they're paying for the termite. Goes in here. Again, you're going to give them a time, just like they gave you, to respond. And then you're to the last page. So we got the seller's going to accept it or counter it. And if this is filled out again, now you're in an addendum situation where you're going to get an addendum. Personally, if I get a counter, I'm going to addendum. I'm not putting anything else left on here. And I write in sorry. I write in for my first counter offer. I will write in here, please see addendum number 1. And I'm still going to have my buyer sign this, and I'm going to fill out the addendum. And this is going to be countered. And then I start with addendums. It's just cleaner. If the only exception that to be if the listing agent has called me and said, everything's great with the contract, my buyer's in total agreement, however, he wants to pay $2,000 in closing costs instead of $3,000. And I say, okay. And she said, we're going to counter that. And I'll say, okay, My next call is to my buyer. Just got a call from the listing agent. They're great with everything on there. Everything looks great. They accept everything. They do want to pay $1,000 less in closing costs. If they say, we're fine with that, then I'm not going to addendum.
Because it's a small change.
That's a small change, yeah. Or if they say, okay, I want them to pay $1,000 less, not $2,000 less. Then I call the listing agent and say, hey, just talk to my buyer. Do you think they would do just $1,000 less as opposed to $2,000 less? Hopefully she's going to call her seller and it's going to be here and we're just going to accept it. But if I know if I have to counter just that item, I will.
But does it have to be in writing?
Yes, everything has to be writing. Everything has to be writing. Everything has to have signatures.
But you said you're not gonna do an addendum.
I'm not going to do an addendum if I know it's going to be something really simple. Yeah, but if it's involved, I'm going to get an addendum on there. Or if I've talked to the listing agent, or she's called me and I can see there's a whole lot of changes coming, I know I'm going to do an addendum on it. Of course, I'm going to wait till I get the counter, because I know what she's told me. But perhaps the seller's had time to think about it before she gets there and gets signatures on it. But there's a lot of counters going back and forth. I want an addendum because I want it clean.
Yeah, look, you know, you're pretty close when you're just doing verbal back and forth on some
Absolutely.
small items.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, just verbally, everyone agree, same
Yes.
paperwork, boom, done.
And I'll tell you what's happened to me several times, and I love it, especially as a listing agent. I'll have a buyer agent call me and say, I've got an offer on your property on 123 Main Street. This is what my people are going to offer. This is what they're going to ask for. Da, 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 da. Like, no, I don't know what's going to work. Write it up and send it over to me. So they write it up and they send it to me. And they've done it electronically, so it's easy to make changes. And I talk to my seller and say, hey, look, this is the offer I've got. This is what it says. What's a good time for us to get together? And they let me know, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that, but I'll do this and I'm happy with their price. And I'll call the listing agent, selling agent back and say, I just talked to my seller. And I think we can make this deal work. The only thing they're not happy with are they don't want to play home warranty and the term is not transferable. And she'll say, that'll work. I say, okay, why don't you go back in and fix it on the contract? If you're going to fix it on the contract, she's going to send me this, and all my seller has to do is accept. Or she'll call me.
So basically, that verbal like counter offer, so you can discuss that with your seller.
Yes.
And you don't have to worry about making all those changes.
You don't have to worry about absolutely. You don't have to worry about making the changes. I've had an agent call me, write an offer on something, and my seller will counter, and I'll call her and say, look, this is what they're going to counter at. I'll get the addendum to you as soon as possible, or I'll get her counter offer to you as soon as possible. And she'll say, no, 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 just let me tell her. And she'll want to verbally, I can't get to the computer. I can't get to my buyers, whatever it is. So we are verbally countering back and forth. We have nothing in writing, and we got verbal stuff going like crazy. And I'm always tense with that. I keep notes of everything we're doing and come to an agreement. And then she'll send it to me, and it's just what the seller has countered. And my buyer accepts it. But that's in rare situations. So, initials at the bottom of every page.
Are we going over most common mistakes?
Yeah. Initials at the bottom of every page. Check that box that's accepted or not accepted. Signatures everywhere, and this has to be there. This lets everyone know that this offer has been accepted, and it's the last person to sign it. You've countered to the seller's accepted it, they're signing. The seller's countered to you, your buyer's accepted it, your buyer signed it. The last person to sign the contract signs this.
There are some lenders and other agents in our area that think everyone has to initial that acceptance line.
They do not.
That's not the case.
It's not the
As you said, it's just too.
It's the last one to sign the contract. The last person to say, you beat me to death, I'm going to take the offer. Or the last one to go, yay, and take it. Yeah, what I want is I want to write a good, clean offer. I want to send it to the listing agent. I want her seller to sign everything on there. I want him to check the acceptance box, and I live in that perfect world, by the way. It's all up here, but I live in that perfect world. Seller sign it and accept it and bring it back to me with the seller's initials here, but those have to be there. If I go in compliance and I don't have it, I'm sending it right back to you. Because I don't have an accepted offer if that's not filled in.
So I'm sorry. Let's go back a second.
Sure.
So now you have to write a residential purchase agreement. You upload it through the KW, and you do all these exchanges through that, right? Command.
If they don't have DocuSign, then you can't. You can share it with them DocuSign, you can share it with the listing agent, not DocuSign. Yeah, DocuSign. If they don't have it, you might have to find a different way to do it. But generally, if you send it to them, they'll sign up for it, or they're able to get in and just sign it. Sometimes their buyer is not, their technology is challenged.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and you take it.
She'll take the paper to them and then get it back to you. It's not like the olden days where I'd have to track an agent down and meet her in the parking lot at the grocery store, hand it to her out the window. But yeah, sometimes you have to take it into them and everything. Generally, she'll upload it and send it back to you, but it won't have electronic signatures on it. So you just have to work that out once you get in the offer situation. But yeah, I always do them electronically and share them that way with the agent. And I've kept up my dot loop. If I keep dot loop, I pay for it and still have it because I started in dot loop. And that's where I'm comfortable, although I know DocuSign. But it works well because I'll ask, do you have DocuSign? If they don't, I'll say, do you have dot loop? So I can send it either way, but I can work it out if it's just DocuSign as well. So initials, signatures, purchase amount, seller's closing costs, recap.
You don't have to redo the recap. Well, so I'm in one right now. The first offer was non-void. They were taking best final offer.
Okay.
So I just redid the recap, just haven't. Like, do you have to do that if you're doing an offer on the same property, but it's a different price?
No, you just need one
With the
recap.
same client. It's
No,
just the
you just need
client,
one with
right?
your client.
Not
Yeah,
a
yes.
contract.
And the only way that would change is that if this changed to our company, if this changed to Keller Williams, then you'll need a limited consensual dual agent form.
Okay.
Unless you're a transaction broker or they're a transaction broker.
Okay.
Just in-house cannot represent a buyer and one represent the buyer and one represent the seller. But then you still have your recap. You just have a limited consensual dual agent form of transaction. Yeah, but you don't have to do a recap for every offer. No, you do not. If you sell his house in 2 years, then you need another recap. But you only need one recap for that client. Yeah.
To touch on, and this is when we write purchase agreements, but when we get, as a listing agent, we get a purchase agreement with another company.
Right.
Of course, they always go off the BCAR, Keller Williams, AGC, Daphne
Yep.
in there.
Yep.
And personally, I just write underneath it. I don't scratch through it. I write underneath it, Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast,
Absolutely.
because technically by law, we're supposed to have that.
Yes,
Is that
yes.
acceptable?
Yeah, that's what I told them in the beginning. We don't want AGC. It's Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast. And reiterated, it can't be Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast Homes, House-Made Home, or Alabama Gulf Coast Herb Group. And I'll get that a lot. And I have to send it back to them and say they change it. Alabama Gulf Coast 5 Doors team.
So it is both KW.
Yes.
So I am an agent of both. No, I am an agent of the seller, for example, if it is my listing, and then the KW agent represents the buyer. Is gonna be
No. If it's an in-house listing, that listing belongs to Keller Williams. It's his listing. Okay, and you're the selling agent. His offer belongs to Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast. That means that every agent with Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast has a fiduciary relationship to his seller. So you cannot represent the buyer because you represent the seller already. Okay, or the company represents that seller. So if Keller Williams has a listing and they represent the seller, you cannot represent the buyer. If it's Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast, and they're just a transaction broker, then you can represent the buyer. But 9 times out of 10, we're going to be in a limited consensual dual agent. Okay, or we're going to be a transaction and a buyer or a transaction and a seller. But I can't have Keller Williams, Alabama Gulf Coast, Keller Williams, Alabama, I say I can, representing the seller and representing the buyer. We can't do that.
You can check both of them on both sides, or limited consensual due diligence.
Yes.
Either one of those.
And I was telling them, I can get, like I got one yesterday, Keller Williams represents the seller, Keller Williams represents the buyer. And my first was like, oh, we can't do that. Now, in that string of all of their documents, I have a limited consensual dual agent form. But I'm a little persnickety. So I send it back and go, hey, is there any way that I can get you all to check the limited consensual dual agent form? But I have the form.
So
So,
you have to send that back, and we have to change those boxes, so we have to resend that page back to get everyone to sign it again.
yeah, so let's do it right the first time. Okay, if you were my broker and you sent it back to me and I had something in the contract that I had to fix, and I know that as soon as I click the box, everyone's signatures are gonna be gone, and I need this one initial, I'm gonna print this page off and I'm gonna meet with my seller and say, look, I need your initials on here, I need to change this, and I'm gonna have them initial it by hand. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Just by where you made the change, not
Yes.
everything. Okay.
Yeah, just where you make the change, just where you make the change. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, and whenever you get in here, show all your documents that are required. So you know everything you have to upload in there. The other person who teaches us takes 3 hours. I've taken 1. So I feel like I'm. Do you have everything you need? Are there any questions? Did I leave anything out? Do you feel comfortable with it?
A lot more than I did coming in.
If you're gonna write a contract with a condominium for the first time, don't. Find someone that knows how to do condominiums before you write it all out. And ask them to help you.
Ask them to help you through it. Absolutely. If I'm writing an offer on a condominium, I'm calling somebody who writes offers on condominiums.
You use the same form.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just include a lot of others.
Oh,
You
yeah.
just better know
Yes, what you need to ask for.
and the documents that come with it, but also to how the loans work with it.
Yep.
You know, Joe's Bank in Montana is not gonna be able to approve a condo loan because they don't know what they're doing.
Yep.
So if your buyer comes in, oh, I got my buddy, my brother's a mortgage lender in South Dakota, I think we use him. I say, well,
He doesn't know how to-
it's gonna fail, so there's no point writing this down.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to get somebody too. I'm probably going to call Heather. If it's in Florida, I'm going to call Danielle and get it figured out. Maybe you should have a class. We are always here to help you with anything you have. Hey, how about questions up there? Anybody have any questions? I don't see